Yo, Camille here. In this video, we're going to be ranking Dori's best weapons. We're going to take a look at all of the Claymores in the game right now, and we're going to rank them based around how good they are for Dori. So yeah, without further ado, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Alright, so before we start, I'm going to tell you guys what she needs, so you guys know how am I ranking these weapons. So Dori is generally going to be like a battery slash healer. Her damage and multipliers are not really that much, so you probably don't want to build like any crit or attack on her at all. Her burst is going to cost a lot of energy, plus she scales a little bit with energy recharge, so obviously you're going to need energy recharge. Also, her healing is going to scale with HP, so you're going to need HP. Also, some elemental mastery is going to be good on her. We're not really going to be building crit or anything like that, but we might do like some aggravate damage. That's going to scale with elemental mastery, so it's going to be pretty good. It's not really a thing you'd want to look for specifically on a weapon, but if it gives elemental mastery, then it's better than nothing. It's not really a priority. It's probably better to get it from like substats and stuff like that, but it's there. It's not bad. So these are basically the things you'd want to look for a weapon for Dori. Alright, so now for the tier, obviously as always, we're going to have S tier, A, B, C, and D. S tier are like the best weapons for her. Generally, these are going to be like energy recharge weapons, because energy recharge, in my opinion, is more valuable than HP. You can get HP from multiple sources, but energy recharge, you're kind of limited. So I would recommend getting a energy recharge weapon. A tier are like the next best weapons, you can say. It's either like kind of meh energy recharge weapons or HP weapons. B tier are probably elemental mastery weapons. Then C tier are like any damage weapons with like crit, attack, or anything like that. You know, basically any weapon that's gonna help you a little bit with damage, but it's not as valuable. That's going in C tier. It's probably gonna be huge. A lot of weapons are gonna fall into C tier. And finally, D tier are like the weapons that are completely useless. You know, like physical damage weapons or defense weapons or something like that. So yeah, with that being said, let's start the ranking. Starting off with the Ferret's Shadow, it's gonna give you an HP substat, which is pretty good. Kind of a useless passive, but whatever. I would put this weapon at around B tier. Bloodstained Greatsword is gonna give you elemental mastery, which is pretty good, and the passive is also kind of good. I would put this weapon at B tier too. White Iron defense with a useless passive is going D tier. The passive is gonna restore your HP, but it's just gonna restore it. It's not gonna increase your HP. So yeah, it's definitely going D tier. We have the Quartz. It's gonna give you elemental mastery too. The passive is kind of whatever. It's gonna give you attack, which is not really as valuable, but elemental mastery is pretty good. So it's going B tier too. The Bay Club attack with a useless passive, I would say it's going D tier. Skyrider physical damage substat straight to D tier too. We have the Favonius Greatsword. It's actually one of her best weapons. It's gonna give you a huge energy recharge substat, and the passive is gonna help you a lot with energy too. And it's also gonna help your team with energy. So I would say that's probably one of her best weapons. I would put the Favonius at S tier. We've got the Bell, an HP substat, which is pretty good. The passive is basically just useless. It's gonna give you some extra damage and stuff like that, which is not really what we want. So yeah, just for the HP substat, I would put it at A tier. We've got the Sacrificial Greatsword. It's also one of our good weapons too. It's gonna give you energy recharge as a substat, a smaller passive than the Favonius, but the passive is gonna give you basically 2 elemental skills, which means more energy, so that's gonna kind of like make up for it. I would put it at A tier. It's probably not as good as like the Favonius, but it's still a very, very good weapon. We've got the Royal Greatsword. I would say it's going D tier too. It's not even like a good damage weapon. Raid Slasher for the elemental mastery and kind of a good passive. I would put it at B tier. Prototype Archaic C tier. It's kind of a good damage weapon, but that's about it. White Blind D tier, just defense. Everything is basically useless. Blacklift Slasher for the crit damage. If you want to build her for damage a little bit, you can, but it's not a good weapon on her. So I would put it at C tier. Exact same thing with the Serpent Spine, C tier. Lithic Blade, C tier too. The Star Silver physical damage is going to D tier. It's pretty much useless. You cannot really use anything on that weapon. Luxurious Sea Lord is going to C tier. It's going to give you attack and it's going to increase your damage a little bit, which is pretty decent. We've got the Katsuragikiri. It's going to give you a good energy recharge substat. The passive is kind of good and bad in my opinion. It's going to mess a little bit with your rotations if you want to just like do your elemental skill and then your burst, so like collects the energy particles, but you can change up your rotations a little bit and it's going to work. So yeah, I would say it's a pretty good weapon overall. I would put it at A tier. We've got the Mahara Aquamarine. Wait, I don't think that's just released yet. It's probably not released, but we're gonna do it anyways if you're seeing this video in the future. So yeah, it's gonna give you elemental mastery. The passive is just kind of like whatever. It's gonna give you attack based on your elemental mastery. We don't really need attack, so the passive is kind of useless. But for the elemental mastery, I'd put it at B tier 2. Aquamarine is gonna give you attack, increase your elemental burst damage. It's going to C tier 2 with all of the damage weapon. We've got the new craftable, the forest regalia. It's gonna give you energy recharge, which is pretty good, and the passive is also very good. It's gonna be like more of a supportive passive, you can say. It's gonna give you elemental mastery, and you can give it to other characters. So you're gonna have to switch and pick up the leaf with another character, which is gonna be like a supportive thing. I would say that's one of her best weapons, especially if you have refinements on it. It's gonna buff your characters a lot, and you're gonna have energy recharge on Dori. So I would put it at S tier. I would say that's probably one of her best weapons too. It's a decent weapon for Dori, but most importantly, it's gonna be a very good supportive weapon. We've got the Skyward Pride. It's just gonna give you energy recharge. The passive is basically useless. The base attack is useless too, so there's not really much in there. I would say it's on par with like the Kasaragikuri and all of the energy recharge weapons. So I would put it at A tier 2. Doesn't really matter that it's a 5-star or anything like that. Wolf's Greystone, I guess if you want to use it on Dori, that's gonna look something, but it's a normal damage weapon, so it's gonna be C tier. I would really love someone using the Wolf's Greystone on Dori. Like her bubble thing swinging the Wolf's Greystone. They're probably gonna make it smaller like Sayu, but it's still gonna be fun. Song of Broken Pines, probably D tier in my opinion. Maybe C tier for the high base attack and stuff like that. I guess it's gonna be viable for damage, but for battery / healer Dori, it's definitely not that good. So yeah, I would put it as C tier. We've got the Unforged, pretty much the same thing. It's just gonna give you attack, so it's going C tier. And finally, we've got the Red Horn. It's gonna increase your crit damage and I guess defense and normal attacks damage. Again, it's going C tier just like as any other damage weapon. It's not really the weapon for Dori. So yeah, that was quick. As you guys can see here, her weapons, she doesn't really have that many options. They're pretty accessible options. They're like 4 stars, but she doesn't really have that many. Generally, you probably want to use the Favonius. It's one of her best weapons, or maybe the new craftable is gonna be pretty good too. Other than that, any elemental mastery or HP weapon or energy recharge weapon are all gonna be viable. So yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you want to say anything or you'd want to correct me or give me your ranking, leave it in the comments, and see y'all in the next video. Peace.